Welcome back to the Bengals NFL show. I'm your host, Braden Guthrie, and today we are joined by Connor Kimball of Ultimate Scouting. Connor, thanks again so much for once again joining the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved it so much I had to come back on. So that's always a good sign. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So before we get started, why don't you tell our amazing viewers where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Ultimate Scouting on YouTube. I post videos, power rankings, game picks every week, just some top 10 plays of the week as well, just trying to grow that channel out as much as possible. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at Ultimate Scouting as well. So definitely give me a follow if you're interested in any of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Make sure you guys follow him. There's no excuses to be lazy. I have linked all of his accounts in the description. So make sure you check it out. He's a fellow Bengals fan. We got to stick together. And speaking of the
Absolutely.
Bengals, so I don't know if you've heard, but the Bengals have kind of a big game coming up. They play the Ravens, which are apparently in the division, and this is apparently a big game. So I think we need to talk about this.
I haven't even heard of it, but I guess, yeah, let's go ahead and do it.
So the Cincinnati Bengals playing the Baltimore Ravens Sunday night football. I think this is a game both side of the fans have been looking forward to. Whereas Bengals fans all off season, we've just been Ravens fans, oh, injuries, 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 blah. That's why you won. As if Jamar Chase in week 7 last year didn't make Marlon Humphrey his son. But to be fair, not that I want to give them credibility, but in the second game the Bengals played against them when Joe Burrow was breaking some records, we do have to acknowledge the fact that it was similar to our 2019 team where it was just a bunch of practice squad players against a high powered offense. So this year, at least for this game, that is not going to be the case. These are two not even relatively, pretty healthy teams heading in, two high powered offenses, two very, very well known quarterbacks in the NFL. So let's start with the Bengals offense against the Ravens defense. So the Ravens defensive coordinator from last year, somebody who wasn't ready to put Joe Burrow in the Hall of Fame, Wink Martindale, is no longer defensive coordinator. Now, Wink's, what he liked to do is he loved the blitz. He loved the apply pressure. And while we're certainly still going to see that from the Ravens defense, this defense is a lot different from last year. So, what are you looking for in the game that you think the Bengals are going to need to adjust from last year to this year?
Yeah, so absolutely. I think number one, the Ravens secondary is really, really good this year. Like you kind of mentioned, Marlon Humphrey was not playing well the last time they met up, but Marcus Peters was out. They also add Marcus Williams in free agency now. They've got some really good pieces. Kyle Hamilton they drafted as well. So I think, both safeties and corners are a huge strength of this Ravens team now, where, last time the Bengals met up, they were so injured at corner and they just got decimated by this really talented Bengals receiving core. I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case today. It's going to come a lot harder for these Bengals receivers. And so I'm very interested to see how they guard Jamar Chase. Do they put Humphrey on him one-on-one, or do they bring safety help over the top? Do they double T Higgins? I'm just interested to see kind of how they match up with these really talented Bengals receivers, because in theory, they have the guys to match up with them one-on-one in man coverage. If they want to bring some blitz, if they want to take advantage of the Bengals offensive line that's still trying to figure things out, I'd be very interested to see that matchup there.
Absolutely. And last week against the Dolphins, the Jamar Chase was being doubled just about the whole game. And while the Dolphins put Xavier Howard one-on-one with T. Higgins, an idea on paper that makes a lot of sense, but then T. Higgins, one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL, exposed that cover saying, no, I'm a wide receiver one. You can put a damn great cornerback on me and I will still win. With that being said, if the Ravens do follow a similar strategy and they leave Marlon Humphrey on T. Higgins and so let's say Marcus Peters on Jamar Chase with safety help, how do you think that bodes for them as we have alluded to a few times already, Marlon Humphrey last year against the Bengals did not play well. We may mention that a few more times because it's fun, but as much trash as we want, he is a dominant corner, and he has certainly has this game circled on his calendar. So, how do you think that bodes for T. Higgins if he is seen once again the one-on-one matchup with a star cornerback?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you mentioned, I mean, Xavier Howard is one of the best corners in the NFL. And I think Marlon Humphrey is right there as well. He didn't play well last matchup, but he definitely is. And like you mentioned, I think he's going to be wanting to play his best against the Bengals this year. I do think that T. Higgins is, a top 15 receiver in the NFL, though, and they have two of those on this roster, which makes it so difficult to defend. You also got Tyler Boyd in the middle, which we'll, I'm sure, talk about more as well. But I think this is a good strategy in theory, much like with the Dolphins, where you put Humphrey on Higgins and then double Chase. I think one thing that the Bengals really need to do in this game is get Chase manufactured touches, whether that's screens, slants, just short curls, anything in which they can just get the ball in Jamar's hand and let him make plays with the ball in his hand. That's where he's really, really dangerous. Teams are taking away his deep ball, which is his number one most effective way of scoring points and getting yards. But his up next is Yak. And so the Bengals really need to kind of deliberately force the ball to him in the right spots and get him the ball in space, let him make plays. I think T. Higgins is gonna do what T. Higgins does. He's gonna have some good plays. I think him and Burrow have been on the same page really well so far this year. I think that they've probably had the best connection of any of the quarterback receivers on this team. And that's saying a lot because, Chase and Burrow are still definitely on. So I think that this offense is going to get their yards through the air, but you've just kind of got to be smart and deliberate about where you push and where you kind of manufacture touches for these guys.
Absolutely. And kind of alluding back to talking about Chase and manufacturing touches for him. We saw that a bit week 1 against the Steelers where he had, what was it, 10 catches?
I think it might have even been more than that, but yeah, he had a ton.
It may have actually been 15. That might be, but regardless, the Bengals manufactured touches for him that game. And that really helped the offense in the second half kind of get it out of its little funk that it was in. And we saw the Bengals doing a lot of creative stuff. We even saw a bit of a Debo situation where he was in the backfield a few times, but we really haven't seen that since. I think we saw it like 2 or 3 times against the Cowboys, but I don't believe since the Cowboys game he's been used at all. So I wonder if they will use that, try and mix up the defenses, confuse them where the ball's going, and also if they line Chase up in the backfield, you have to wonder how does the Ravens secondary respond to that.
Also, I mean, with the run game just being so ineffective right now, those are ways to kind of use the run game. It's not a run, but a quick screen out to Jamar Chase is essentially a run. And so you can use things like that to kind of get a lot of that short yardage stuff, get the safeties and everybody coming into the box, and then you could hit them over the top. So I think that they really need to use, like, I was going back and watching some highlights, and the Bengals used Jamar Chase on bubble screens so many times last year. And I feel like I've seen it like twice so far this year. I'm not really sure why, but I feel like they really need to get that going. Even just screens to mix in to Hayden Hurst, just get more people involved in the screen game that'll slow up the pass rush and allow you to take deep shots down the field as the defenders start to creep up.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the run game for the Bengals has been a massive issue this year. It doesn't take Albert Einstein to figure that out. And I think what you just said is absolutely perfect and makes sense because then that does spread out the defense. That does create more opportunities. And I think as a big part of the reason why we haven't seen last year's offense this year, while the run game was no top of the NFL last year, it was good enough to make the defenses respect it. And that's how you're able to get Jamar Chase and T. Higgins over the top. Defenses aren't showing that respect so far this year. And why should they? Because the Bengals run game isn't working, but you start influencing more screenplays, like you just said. Give some the mix and feed them, finding new ways, get your playmakers the ball, and suddenly that opens up, and that can help the run game. That could make safety bite. That can make Marcus Williams bite. And next thing you know, Jamar Chase has his step on Marcus Peters or Marlon Humphrey.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, just staying on the run game. So we could just ask, what do they need to do? That's too much of a broad question because there's a lot they need to do. Uh, Something that is interesting to me is Mixon. He was drafted back in 2017, and as we know, running backs have shorter lives in the NFL compared to most. Obviously, the offensive line hasn't done him favors, but have you seen where Mixon is not doing himself any favors? His vision may seem short sight. He's not doing as good of a job as making people miss. Do you think he's also hurting himself with the offensive line?
I think there's definitely some element of that. I think that, when Samaje Perine came in that game, a couple weeks ago and he chewed out the clock, you saw him just hitting the hole deliberately, just smash the hole, pick up 4 yards, call it a day. And I think that one thing that Mixon does is he's patient, which is a good thing, but he's not hitting the holes and just like lowering the shoulder, picking up 4 yards. He's waiting for that big play too often, and the offensive line isn't creating those big plays. And so I think that's causing a lot of negative plays. I also think that there's a lot that goes into that. I was noticing, I don't feel like the Bengals have ran outside zone as much as they did last year. And I think that that's a system that really benefits Mixon, where he's able to kind of read the blocks in front of him, find that cutback lane, and hit the hole. And I feel like they're running a lot more inside zone, just kind of in between the tackles this year, and it's not working. It's also really predictable play calling. They're calling it on first down pretty much every time, it feels like. It's very noticeable when they're going to run. When Burrow's under center, they run it a lot. When he's not, they don't run it a lot. So I think it's a combination of play calling, bad offensive line play, and there is some element of Mixon just needs to hit the hole, trust himself, and just lower the shoulder, pick up what you can, and move on to another play.
All right, and keeping on Zach Taylor play calling, that transitions very nice into our next talking point is Zach Taylor. First 2 weeks were atrocious against the Jets and the Dolphins. He looked better, but it was certainly no masterclass. Now we're going against one of the Harbaugh brothers, the one I have respect for. But he is, regardless how you feel like him, he is one of the most respected coaches in the NFL, and for good reason. And on paper, John Harbaugh is going to outcoach Zach Taylor. And I don't think any of us are expecting the Bengals win this game because of Zach Taylor's brilliance, but we can't have a week one play caller, Zach Taylor type of game. So are you concerned that Zach Taylor may come out perhaps conservative against the Ravens? Or do you think he'll come out really aggressive against a divisional opponent, against somebody who he has seen his quarterback light up? So what do you think? Do you think we're going to see, say, fun Zach or boring Zach?
You never know what you're going to get with Zach. He's sometimes like crazy aggressive. He'll go for it on 4th and 5 from, wherever. And sometimes he refuses to kick a 50-yard field goal because he wants to punt. Sometimes he'll come out and just he makes no sense with his play calling sometimes. And then other times it's like, all right, we're going to take it right to him. So you just never know what you're going to get. I think we'll see that Zach Taylor has kind of learned through the first couple of weeks of the season that you need to just go out and you need to be aggressive. And I think the last 2 weeks they've been aggressive. They come out, they get the ball both times to start out, and they score touchdowns. How many times have we seen the Bengals, give up a touchdown or give up a field goal, and then it takes the offense a bunch of like an entire half to get going, and then they're finally able to come back? I think that by starting fast and calling plays aggressively at the beginning of the game, it gives them a lot more confidence moving forward, and it allows them to kind of mix up the play calling moving forward, because I think Taylor wants so desperately to not abandon the run game and to not, to make sure that everybody's getting involved in all these things. And sometimes I feel like he gets so caught up in that, they're down by like 14 points and they're just 1st and 10 running Mixon into the back of Cordell Volson once again for 0 yards. It's like at some point you've got to just scrap the game plan and figure things out. And I think that they're really good at making adjustments, but Zach sticks to his game plan, and it all just depends in the first half. that all just depends on if it works or if it doesn't. Because if it doesn't work, you're stuck with a really conservative, boring offense for the first half, and then the Bengals have to dig themselves out of a hole. And then other times you get the game plan working, and the Bengals put up 20 first half points, and things look great. So I think it all kind of comes down to how well they game plan for this game. And I think, as you mentioned before, this is a team that they know well. This is a team that they know that Joe Burrow has had success with. And I think from all of the interviews this season, I really feel like Burrow, don't mind my dogs if you hear them, but I really think that Burrow has been really just like, he's circling this game. Every time that he's interviewed, he's like, what teams talk trash the most? He's like, the Ravens talk. And, I think the Martindale comment that you mentioned before kind of gets him going. I know he's not there anymore, but like, he's just got a lot of, I think he's ready for this team. He's ready for this team. I think that Zach Taylor's going to let him kind of just go with this game plan and really air things out. And I think that they're going to be successful.
Right. One more thing before we go on to the Bengals defense versus Ravens offense. You made a really good point where the Bengals may give up a touchdown and field goal, and then the Bengals offense goes conservative. Obviously, the Bengals offense being down when they get on the field for the first time. So do you think perhaps the Bengals are a team that should always want the ball first, get the lead first? Or do you think it's just a matter of if they would have gotten the ball after the Dolphins or the Jets, and regardless of what happened, they would still have that same aggressive game plan? Or do you think them being down early causes some early game no fun Zach?
I think that that's an interesting question because analytically, like, it's proven that you should defer because you get the chance to like double up at the end of the half. But for a team that I don't know, I feel like mindset is such a key part of how this team operates. And when they go out and they score a touchdown, you can just see like this team gets so fired up and they get so excited and they play well. And I know part of that is they're 2-0 when they get the ball first and they're 0-2 when they defer. It's just, but this team just plays differently when they are able to be aggressive early on, and in neutral situations, they can throw the ball and they can be aggressive. I think that that's really a key for them. And, I don't know if every single time they should take the ball, but I definitely think there is a mindset that kind of flips with this team where when they're able to control the game and get up early, they're much more successful.
That is a very interesting concept we're going to have to look at for the rest of the year. I think that could be a fun case study if any of you guys are into that, because obviously we're, like you said, 0-2 when we get the ball second, 2-0 when we get the ball first. But obviously that's a very small sample size, very different teams they were playing. So that just popped in my head. And did you know that the Ravens have a running back at quarterback?
Oh, they do.
Just to stir the little pot. So you mentioned earlier, Lamar Jackson's one of the most well-known quarterbacks in the NFL. All jokes aside, he is one of, in my opinion, a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Very dynamic, can elude pressure just with the snap. He has an extremely strong arm. He's very smart. Well, most of the time he's pretty smart. He has those decisions here and there, but so does our savior Joe Burrow.
That's fair.
Point being, Lamar Jackson is a threat. We know this, especially when he spinned out our whole practice squad.
Yeah, I was at that game. That was painful.
What a beautiful, what was that, a birthday gift, Christmas gift?
Something like that. And they lost by like 50 points. That was rough.
Yeah. But yeah, the Bengals have been victims of Lamar Jackson more than once, especially pre-Joe Burrow times. And Lamar Jackson's still one of the best, as we said. It's the same Lamar Jackson they're playing, and one concept I want to talk about is obviously the Lamar contract situation. That hasn't taken over the media like it did during training camp and all that, because football is playing. But you also have to think this is a game Lamar Jackson is looking forward to. Like we talked about, Joe Burrow has this circled. I bet Lamar Jackson does too. Obviously, he didn't play in the second game last year. Did play in the first, did not have his best day. So I think that leaves a sour taste in his mouth. So between that and a potential contract, getting a win over having a dominant performance in a win against defending AFC champs and kind of the new intense rivalry of the AFC North. Do you think any of those factors are going in his mind going into Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that all of those things kind of combine to make this a really exciting game for both teams. Like we mentioned, I think there's a lot of motivation on both sides. I think not only from the players, from the fans. I've interacted with a lot of Ravens fans this off season, and they're crazy. And I know the Bengals fans are crazy about this matchup as well. And I think just a lot of people are looking forward to this game. It's prime time too, which just makes it all the much better on that front. So, I'm excited to see this. And I think that there's definitely some added motivation, especially for Lamar and Burrow and, everybody on this team. I think the Ravens are looking to get back at them. The Bengals, they've had their struggles against the Ravens in recent years. They kind of dominated them for a while there, and then things got rough. And last year, it felt like they just took out all that anger on them. And I think this is going to be a really fun matchup.
So, a injured player not returning this week, but somebody who missed the start of the season, former Ohio State running back J.K. Dobbins. Obviously, Dobbins was somebody else in the immediate offseason who seemed to get mad at reporters for doing their jobs and doing it accurately. That's beyond the point. I always just kind of laughed at that, especially the first few weeks, because I just remember he's like, no, I'm healthy, do your job. Then he wasn't healthy enough to play. I felt that was very unnecessary to take a dig at the reporters. But
Yeah.
that's beyond the point. He's back in the NFL. This is, I believe, will be his third game back since his injury. And we haven't, Dobbins has, in a way, just been there for the Ravens. It seems as they're not rushing him back, which is smart, especially in that running back position. So do you think we're going to see a lot of volume from J.K. Dobbins against the Bengals? Do you think they're going to kind of do what they do a lot and kind of have a committee in the running back room for this matchup? Or how do you see the Ravens going about that?
I definitely think, I mean, Dobbins had a pretty decent snap share last week. He had 2 touchdowns, I believe, as well. And so I think that they'll probably play him relatively at a high volume this week. I think that, in the run game, that's really where the Ravens thrive. We've known that for a long time. They use a lot of zone reads, a lot of quarterback runs. You got to, just set the edge as a defender and let either Lamar go or let the running back go. And it's tough. But I think that that's going to be a big part of this game. Dobbins and the run game are going to be a big portion of how the Ravens try to move the ball this week. And, especially with the Bengals missing DJ Reader, there's that run defense. We'll kind of see. Miami didn't really run the ball very effectively, but they weren't a very good running team either. So I think that I'll be very curious to see how much DJ Reader's injury impacts how the Bengals run defense looks. And I think that Dobbins will probably have a big part of that.
Absolutely. What also is interesting, the Ravens, as they blew a pretty big lead against Buffalo last week, we saw them really rely on the run game and Buffalo adjusting. They found a lot of success early in the game. So just let's obviously hope we're not at a point where we're down 17-0 at halftime or whatever. But do you think the Bengals can use what they saw from Buffalo to insert a game plan in stopping this run? Or do you think the Ravens coaches just went way too conservative, way too quick, and it was just a kind of, obviously there's more complexity to this as NFL coaches, but do you think the Bills just quickly realized this and we just kind of saw a Marvin Lewis type performance from Harbaugh last week?
I think that there were some just weird plays in that second half. Lamar had like a tipped ball interception. They decided to go for it on 4th down and goal. And Lamar threw a pick in the back of the end zone towards the end of the game instead of kicking a field goal. There was that like huge controversial decision there. And, ultimately the Bills ended up winning by a field goal. But I just think that, those plays were kind of crazy. And then you also had just a coaching staff that, they're up, they can run the ball well usually. And so I don't necessarily blame them for trying to rely on the run game there. I do think that, from a Bengals perspective, I saw Rashad Bateman is injured as well this week. I'm not sure if he'll play or not, but I think that the way you stop the Ravens has got to be you got to stop the run and make Lamar beat you with his arm. And he certainly can. He's shown that this season and beyond. He's good enough to do that, but I think you like your chances a lot more with that. And so you've got to stop the run. And I think that the Bills ended up doing that pretty effectively, but they also have a really, really good front seven. And, their linebackers were shooting gaps, making plays. And I mean, the Bengals have a good front seven as well, but the Bills really kind of locked things up in the second half there. I don't know that I think they maybe allowed like 3 points in the second half.
I believe it was just a field goal.
Yeah. And so they played really, really well. And I think that you can certainly kind of take some of those concepts and schemes perhaps from the Bills, but I think that the Bengals are familiar enough with the Ravens and they've beat them and proven they can stop them that obviously things change over the course of a year, but I do think that they have done a pretty good job doing their research on this team and kind of figuring out the best ways to stop them. So I'm sure they're coming in with a game plan of their own that they feel pretty confident in.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, there was a lot of craziness at the second half of that Ravens Bills games. That was some questionable decisions. And you made the great point that I failed to kind of mention. You rather the Ravens be throwing than running. And that's what kind of led to that Bills comeback. They came up on the run, even though the Ravens had a lead, they still threw it. I personally thought they didn't throw it. I don't want to say throw it enough. I guess a lack of adjustments in the second half may be a better way to phrase, because it was like any play. It was very reliant on how that first down run would do and all
I
that.
also, I also think that Lamar Jackson he has such like a small margin for error because of the way that this team operates. And let's be real, besides Mark Andrews, this receiving room isn't like amazing. Their running backs are fine, but like Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews are really the core of this offense. And so when Lamar throws 2 picks in a second half, it really derails how this team is able to move the ball. And, one little mistake by Lamar can be bigger than like one mistake by Burrow, for example, who has really good playmakers, who maybe Jamar Chase can go up and bail Burrow out on a bad throw or whatever that is. I don't know that Lamar necessarily has that same luxury. And so I think that mistakes are really amplified for Lamar. And that's definitely something to kind of keep in mind is he just doesn't have the playmakers necessarily, besides Mark Andrews, that can necessarily bail him out and make all of these kind of crazy plays.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always easier said than done. But Mark Andrews, he is certainly somebody I'm sure Lou Anarumo is losing a little bit of sleep over. The Bills, they did a pretty good job of containing Mark Andrews. As I believe he had, 3 catches, 39 yards?
Something like that. It was not a big game for him. It's definitely going to be a big Trey Flowers game for sure.
Absolutely. And that brings up perfectly to what I want to talk about next. One of the key matchups in this game is Trey Flowers versus Mark Andrews. Trey Flowers, a tight end shutdown, or I don't know the phrase to use, but Trey Flowers, he is on this team because he can guard tight ends, and he does a damn good job of that. And obviously, this week he's going to face the best tight end he has faced this year in Mark Andrews. So I don't really want to predict the matchup because it could go a million different ways. So that is a big matchup. And I guess I do want to say is, what are your concerns for Trey Flowers going against Mark Andrews, who's obviously one of the best in the league, as we alluded to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a top 2 tight end right now. I mean, the way he's playing, it's Kelsey and then Andrews. He is just so good. Flowers has, everything that you need to be able to guard tight ends. That's why he's been effective at it. He's long, he's big, and he's fast enough to keep up with tight ends. And like you said, that's the reason he's on this team. That's why the Bengals brought him in, and that's why he plays. Now, he's not going to be matched up on him every single time. You've got Von Bell going to be on him, Logan Wilson, probably Jermaine Pratt. Is he going to be healthy? I haven't heard anything.
I don't think there's been really any clear sign if he's playing or not. It seems to be up in the air.
So regardless, whether that's him or Akeem Davis-Gaither, I mean, the linebackers, the safeties, Trey Flowers, maybe even Mike Hilton will have plays on him for sure. But I think the biggest thing is just, I wouldn't mind if they bracket him because, if you make Devin Duvernay beat you, I'm okay with that. If you make maybe Rashad Bateman plays, if you make him beat you, okay. But, I trust Awuzie on Bateman. I trust Apple well enough on Duvernay. So I think you've just got to take Andrews away. Now, that's, like you said, easier said than done. But they've got the players. They've got, a lot of the players that they drafted this year. Even Dax Hill, Cam Taylor-Britt, they're versatile pieces that you can kind of move around and have them guard tight ends or have them guard specific matchups. And I think Trey Flowers is a lot like that as well. They've gotten very kind of versatile in what they can do on the back end. And I think Lou Anarumo has done a really, really good job with that. And so I think that the Bengals have the guys in theory that they can slow them down. You're not going to stop them, but you can slow them down. And hopefully that's enough because they don't really have much else beyond that.
Exactly. And my only real main concern with this, as you said, it's not going to be like a Trey Flowers is on it, Mark Andrews every snap of every play. But I think when we, after the game, and we look at the matchup statistics, I think at the end it will be Trey Flowers on Andrews the most. And I have confidence Flowers isn't going to hold him to 0 yards. The whole defense isn't going to hold him to 0 yards. That's just unrealistic. But I do think he will have a really fun matchup. My main concern, and it's really for the whole defense, just not Trey Flowers, is, like you said, it's Kelsey, then Andrews. Mm-hmm. They're going against a much better tight ends than they have the past 4 weeks. They had Freierman, then Schultz, then Uzama didn't get a catch. Is he even the starting tight end?
I think Conklin is. Yeah. I don't know why they paid him that much money to go be the tight end too, but whatever.
But yeah, man. So far it's working out for us. But yeah, my concern is it's such a upgraded position that they're playing and such a playmaker. But like you said, it's just kind of him. And I'm imagining he's playing, but J.K. Dobbins was on the Ravens injury report today. Today being Wednesday, the 5th. It's for you guys who are watching this tomorrow when it will be published, or perhaps Friday. We are recording this on Wednesday. But yeah, so that's just my main concern for the defense is how will they adjust to such much better competition. And, the tight end, it used to be the Bengals kryptonite. Like, it was not great last year until we really saw Trey Flowers consistently be put on tight ends. But, yeah, tight ends always scare me. I have tight end PTSD from my elementary day watching.
I don't blame you. This team, I don't know what it was. Until Trey Flowers at the second half of last year, the team couldn't guard a tight end ever. And, we'd have, backup tight ends just roasting our defense. And I think part of that was the linebackers weren't very good. And now I think they are. Logan Wilson's legit really, really good. And now we've got matchup guys like Trey Flowers, like Dax Hill, like Von Bell that can match with these guys. So I think that the personnel is a lot better, but thank goodness, because that was painful.
Yeah, exactly. So, yes, do you have any bold predictions or takes for this game? Not necessarily score. It can be anything. It can be a player playing, a player going off, really anything.
I think that in theory, this could be a Daxton Hill game. I think we haven't seen him much at all. But I think this is a game where we can definitely see a role for him, like we talked about with Andrews. And they also have some other good tight ends. Isaiah Likely has been really good for him. He was a rookie as well. And I think Hill has a role in this game where he can come up, he can hit, he can guard tight ends really well. So I definitely think he's going to get more involved, which we haven't seen at all. So I definitely think that that'd be interesting to watch.
It just realized me because we're using Zoom that people didn't see my reaction when he started talking. If you guys didn't see, I did this. I was mad because he kind of stole what I wanted to talk about. My, I guess, wild prediction is we'll see at least Daxton Hill get 40% of the defensive snaps. Considering how many snaps he's gotten in defense for the past 4 weeks, which I think is averaging like 2 or 3 a game, that seems to be a bit of a wild take, but common theme and something you just really spoke to perfection is these players, these versatile players that the Bengals have on their team. And this is games like the Ravens where the versatile players are the most valuable, where Daxton Hill can line up in multiple positions. You know, with the selection of the Daxton Hill, obviously the Jesse Bates contract is kind of at a height and it's talking replacement. But one of the themes we always talked about was they drafted a Swiss Army knife. They didn't draft a particular replacement for a particular position. Of course, if Bates isn't on the team, Daxton Hill will be labeled as a starting free safety, but that's a conversation for another time. Point being is they drafted a Swiss Army knife. And in games like this, that's where you want a guy like Daxton Hill. So I think he will have a huge part in this game. So do you have any more wild predictions or takes about this? What will most likely be a very exciting and fun game to watch?
I think that I don't know that this is really bold, but I think that hopefully, I don't know if this is wishful thinking or not. I think that the Bengals running game gets going a bit. I'm not expecting, necessarily like 150 yards for Mixon or anything like that. But I think this Ravens defense, they got absolutely torched by Joe Burrow twice last year. And I think they're really going to be hyper focused on stopping the Bengals' weapons and preventing Jamar Chase from beating them for a big touchdown and not letting T. Higgins run by him. And I think that maybe this is going to be a game where Mixon's able to kind of have some more empty boxes, have a little bit more opportunities to run against a team that's more focused on preventing deep shots. And I think that the Ravens defensive line has had some good plays here and there, but they really haven't been amazing so far. Their linebackers, Patrick Queen, has played absolutely horrible so far this season.
Noted.
So yeah, he has not been good at all. So I definitely think that they have some opportunities to get that run game at least in the right direction.
Did you get my Patrick Queen little reference there?
I did.
Very good. I hope all of you viewers also understood that reference. If you don't, just in case, Burrow, as Connor alluded to earlier, Burrow has talked about the Ravens and how much their fans and like to publicly talk trash and all that. And after that, Burrow kind of talked about that. Patrick Queen tweeted out noted. So Patrick Queen, somebody else who I'm sure is looking forward to this game, which I'm sure will be to his regret.
Yeah.
But I guess my final kind of bold take is this game, Josh Chapose solidifies himself as next man up. Last week we saw flashes. He had the sack on Tua, which was unfortunately overshadowed due to the fact that Tua got injured. Prayers for Tua. Hope he is doing okay. And obviously a lot of focus should be on Tua getting hurt and concussion protocol being better. But because of that, and it's understandable, Tupo didn't really get the recognition for the play he made. Also, if any of you guys think that hit was dirty, learn what a tackle is, please. Because that's literally what they teach you. There's no dirty, malicious. But luckily, obviously, you have a few of those Dolphins fans. But for the most part, I didn't see as much complaint as I thought. But I think Tupo is – I'm kind of getting past the point. Tupo has always, I think, been an underrated guy for the Bengals. He doesn't get a large amount of snap counts. He doesn't play a lot. You see him a lot in these short situations where it's more like him than not a run. And he's no Aaron Donald or anything. He's not going to be a nightmare for offensive linemen, but he has power. He has, I would say, for a man of that size, better than average agility and athleticism. And I think with a Ravens team with an offensive line that isn't overly stellar, a run heavy attack, and a quarterback in Lamar Jackson who likes to roam the pocket, I think we may see Tupou make a lot of plays, maybe not even a sack, where I think this may be a game where his presence in the run game will really feel appreciated, and this will kind of be a breakout game for him.
I like that. I think that he's been a good player for the Bengals, really. I think that, like you said, he doesn't get a lot of playing time or a lot of recognition because, he's a nose tackle behind DJ Reader. So he's not really on the field very often unless they go with those like 5-man fronts that they've been using a little bit more. And he's been pretty good in the run game. He really has. And I don't think he looked outmatched at all against the Dolphins last week. I thought he did a good job. He's not the best pass rusher in the world, but neither is DJ Reader. He's good, but like we're really relying on Hendrickson and Hubbard and maybe BJ Hill every now and then for pass rush mostly. Tupou doesn't have to be a pocket pushing pass rusher. If he's just stout in the run game, like I think he has been and can be, then that's a really, really good replacement for DJ Reader.
Josh Tupou, with that power, I think it benefits the Bengals more if he's the one eating that double team, allowing BJ Hill to utilize his more diverse pass rushing. Well, I don't think Josh Tupou getting the one-on-ones is a bad thing. Like I said, I'm very faithful in his power and driving the tackle back. I think having him eating the double team because he's stronger and having somebody with the more consistency in the pass rush could create more issues for the Ravens front line.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think all that makes sense. And I think the Bengals do a pretty good job rotating the defensive linemen as well. You got Osai, Zach Carter, Cam Sample in there for pass rushing downs as well. So I think it'll keep them fresh and ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the biggest matchup of this week is not Joe Burrow versus Lamar Jackson. It is Justin Tucker versus Evan McPherson.
The two best kickers in the league.
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, I don't even know how much of a debate that is anymore.
Yeah.
Because not that I really see it debated that much, but
you're on the wrong side of social media then. You're not in tune with the kicker debate.
Can't say I am.
Man, missing out.
Appears I'll punish myself. But yeah, who hits the longest field goal this week?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I gotta go with my boy Evan. I don't know who has any clue, but I'm going with my boy Evan here. I think that the Bengals they're gonna line him up for like a 55, 57 yarder. He's gonna nail it straight down the middle for sure.
I'm saying Justin Tucker only because I believe
fake fan.
Hear me out. I believe the Bengals are going to score touchdowns and not field goals.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that explanation.
I'll say, this actually isn't legitimate. I'm just more joking around at this point, but Ravens offense, they're just going to keep stalling out, keep kicking them field goals while the Bengals offense scoring.
Right. Well, now I'm going to say Evan McPherson because Jeffrey Gunter is going to block all of Justin Tucker's field goals. And so it's not going to work out. He's not going to have any.
That's a great point and something I failed to bring up as that was last week's game at Jeffrey Gunter's 7th round pick. It's difficult for 7th round picks to make the team. So the fact that he did is already a nice accomplishment for him. And when you are those late round draft picks who make the team, who are primarily playing special teams, you just kind of are dying to make that play, that moment to stand out, that can kind of help break you out. And Governor made that play last week by blocking a Dolphins field goal, in which proved to be, which in the longevity of the game, I don't think would have changed, but certainly gave the Bengals all the momentum they needed to help win that game. Now, I'm not necessarily sure that's going to lead to some breakout, as he's still not going to see a lot of defensive line snaps at all. I think the Bengals are still not ready to use Gunther in that capacity, but let's read it up. I do want to give Gunther a shout out for that blocked field goal. It's always great to see the late round draft picks stepping up, making game changing plays.
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, things like that, they matter. And for the guys that are on the fringe of the roster, special teams is where you can make your difference. And he definitely did in that game. And so good for him. I think that he's a pretty good player as a defensive end also. Like you said, he's not going to get his chances right now, but he's a good player. So I'm excited for him.
And personally, both, I think we really like the pick with that athletic background and profile. And you hear it a lot with these day three guys. They have potential because they're athletic. That being athletic doesn't always translate to being a dominant football player, but it does kind of draw the lines, give you a bit of an edge. Because, I mean, NFL teams, they take very close looks at the NFL combine, obviously, the pro days. They do matter. We have seen those difference makers. We see it a lot in college, not nearly as much in the NFL, but sometimes pure athleticism or pure strength can win you a rep. We saw that on the wrong side of Cedric way more than once.
Yeah. We don't talk about that pick.
He's on the Jets now with Uzama.
Poor Uzama. He doesn't deserve that.
He does not. With that being said, is there anything else about this game that we have not discussed that you want to bring up?
I mean, we got to predict the score, right? All right.
Yeah,
what's the score prediction? Let's hear it.
All right. I am going to say Bengals 34, Ravens 28. Ravens fail to pick it up on fourth down inside of 2 minutes. Bengals need it out. That's how the game ends.
All right. I like your optimism. I think that the Bengals definitely have a good chance in this game. I'm going to be pessimistic and pick the Ravens and just, be happy when I'm wrong. So I'm going to go with the Ravens 23-20. I think that this is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring game. The Bengals defense has been pretty good so far this season. I think that, the Bengals offense is explosive, but they're still figuring things out for sure. So I'm going to go with the Ravens by a field goal in this game, but I hope I'm wrong for sure. And I definitely think I can be.
Oh, you have been wrong more than once. Don't you guys worry?
Oh, all the time. Don't worry. Yeah, I'm well aware.
So that being said, Connor, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you, again, tell our wonderful viewers where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am building a YouTube page, Ultimate Scouting. We're putting out power rankings, weekly predictions, top 10 plays of the week, all that kind of stuff, trying to get more content out there all the time. So I would really appreciate subscribing, liking all those videos there. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter at Ultimate Scouting as well. So would love those follows as well. And you can hear me rant about the Bengals and all things NFL. So yeah, I would appreciate any kind of support there.
Absolutely, guys. Make sure you do follow him. As I said earlier, the links to those accounts are in the description. So just take 5 seconds out of your day, help our boy out. Let's help somebody else in the Who Dey community. Again, Connor, thanks so much. And hopefully the Bengals can come away with a win on Sunday.
Yeah, hopefully my prediction's wrong and you all can make fun of me and laugh at me. So that would make me very happy.
So let's hope for that. Thank you guys once again for watching. I'll see you next time.